There's a peculiar kind of tiredness that has nothing to do with how many hours you slept. You can rest for a full night, wake up to sunlight streaming through your window, and still feel like you're moving through water. The exhaustion sits somewhere behind your eyes, somewhere in your chest. Not quite pain, but not quite peace either. Just a persistent heaviness that colors everything gray. When people notice and ask what's bothering you, you struggle to explain it. Because it's not one catastrophic event. It's not a crisis you can point to and say, that's what broke me. It's more like 1,000 paper cuts over time. Small disappointments, quiet rejections, daily compromises with yourself that seemed harmless in the moment, but accumulated into something crushing. Psychologists have a name for this state: soul fatigue. It's what happens when your emotional reserves have been overdrawn for so long that even simple interactions feel like climbing mountains. You're not depressed in the clinical sense. You're just profoundly, achingly tired of the effort it takes to be a person in the world. Here's what most people don't understand about this kind of exhaustion. The people experiencing it are often the most capable ones in the room. They're the ones everyone leans on. The problem solvers, the reliable friends, the ones who always manage to hold it together when things fall apart. But capability has a cost. When you're strong enough to carry other people's burdens, you usually end up doing exactly that. And somewhere along the way, you forget to put any of it down. You forget that strength isn't infinite, that resilience needs replenishment, that even the deepest well runs dry if nothing flows back in. What happens then is fascinating from a neurological perspective. Your brain, after prolonged periods of stress, without adequate recovery, begins to change its operating system. It shifts from growth mode to survival mode. The prefrontal cortex, responsible for planning and joy and connection, starts to dim. The amygdala, your threat detector, becomes hyperactive. You begin experiencing life through a lens of endurance rather than engagement. Everything becomes about getting through it, getting through the day, getting through the conversation, getting through the smile you need to wear at the family gathering. You're functioning, but you're not flourishing. You're surviving, but you've forgotten what thriving even feels like. This is when people start to feel what I call the great numbness. It's not sadness exactly. Sadness has texture, has tears, has a kind of poetry to it. This is different. This is the absence of feeling. A flatness where emotions used to live. Music sounds like noise. Food tastes like cardboard. Accomplishments feel hollow. Even good news lands on you with the weight of another thing you're supposed to react to appropriately. The clinical term is anhedonia, the inability to experience pleasure. But that term feels too sterile for what's actually happening. What's actually happening is that your soul has gone into hibernation. It's protecting itself the only way it knows how, by shutting down the parts of you that are most vulnerable to disappointment. There's a particular irony to this condition. The more exhausted you become, the more you isolate. And the more you isolate, the more exhausted you become. It's a spiral that feeds itself. You start canceling plans, not because you dislike the people, but because the thought of being on for even an hour feels unbearable. Small talk becomes excruciating. You can't find the energy to care about the topics everyone else seems invested in. Someone's vacation photos, the latest drama at work, opinions about things that won't matter in a week. It all feels so meaningless that participating in it feels like lying. So you withdraw. You become the person who always has an excuse, the one who's always just tired, or not feeling well, or swamped with work. And technically, none of those are lies. You are tired. You don't feel well. You are swamped, just not with work, with existence itself. You start cancelling plans not because you dislike the people, but because the thought of being on for even an hour feels unbearable. Small talk becomes excruciating. You can't find the energy to care about the topics everyone else seems invested in. Someone's vacation photos, the latest drama at work, opinions about things that won't matter in a week. It all feels so meaningless that participating in it feels like lying. So you withdraw. You become the person who always has an excuse, the one who's always just tired, or not feeling well, or swamped with work. And technically, none of those are lies. You are tired. You don't feel well. You are swamped, just not with work, with existence itself. What people on the outside don't see is that isolation isn't rejection. It's self-preservation. Your nervous system is so overstimulated that solitude becomes the only place where you can stop performing, where you can let your face fall into its natural expression without worrying about what it's communicating, where you can exist without the constant mental calculation of how you're being perceived. But here's the trap. Human beings are not designed for prolonged isolation. We're social creatures at our core, and while solitude can be medicine in small doses, too much of it becomes poison. You start losing touch with the parts of yourself that only come alive in connection. The laughter that surprises you, the ideas that spark when someone challenges your thinking, the warmth that spreads through your chest when someone really sees you. Now let's talk about why this happens in the first place. Because soul fatigue doesn't strike randomly. It has causes, patterns, psychological roots that make sense once you understand them. One of the primary culprits is what I call meaning erosion. It's what happens when you spend years doing things that don't align with your deeper values. Maybe you took a job for security that requires you to compromise your integrity daily. Maybe you stayed in relationships out of obligation long after love left. Maybe you built a life that looks impressive to others but feels empty to you. Viktor Frankl, the psychiatrist who survived the Nazi concentration camps, discovered something profound. Humans can endure almost unimaginable suffering if they have a reason, a purpose that makes the suffering meaningful. But remove that sense of meaning, and even minor discomforts become unbearable. This is why someone can work 80 hours a week on a passion project and feel energized, but work 40 hours at a meaningless job and feel destroyed. The exhaustion isn't about the hours. It's about the soul's response to meaninglessness. When your days don't reflect what you value, your spirit begins to protest. At first, quietly, then loudly, then finally through complete shutdown. Another major factor is emotional suppression. Most of us learned early in life that certain feelings are acceptable and others are not. So we developed strategies for managing the unacceptable ones. We swallowed our anger, we minimized our hurt. We performed joy when we felt despair. We said "I'm fine" 10,000 times when we were anything but. And here's the problem with suppression. Emotions don't disappear just because you refuse to feel them. They go underground. They wait. They accumulate like pressure in a closed system. And eventually the energy it takes to keep them suppressed becomes so enormous that you have nothing left for actual living. Think about it. Every time you smiled when you wanted to cry, every time you stayed silent when you wanted to scream, every time you accommodated someone else's needs while ignoring your own. Each of those moments required energy, the energy of pretending, of performing, of maintaining a version of yourself that isn't quite true. Do that for years, and you wake up one day wondering why you feel like you're walking through cement. It's because you are. You're walking through decades of unfelt feelings that have hardened into a weight you carry everywhere. This kind of subtraction feels terrifying, because often the things draining us are the things we've built our identity around. But identity is not fixed, it's fluid. And sometimes who you've been has to die, so who you're becoming can live. Let me tell you something about people who've walked through soul fatigue and come out the other side. They're different. Not broken, but broken open. They've lost their taste for superficiality. They can smell inauthenticity from miles away. They value depth over breadth, quality over quantity, truth over comfort. They're also remarkably compassionate, because once you've known that particular kind of tiredness, you recognize it instantly in others. You see it behind the smile someone's working too hard to maintain. You hear it in the voice of someone saying they're fine when they're clearly not. You sense it in the person who's become too quiet, too withdrawn, too absent. And unlike people who've never experienced it, you don't judge. You don't tell them to just push through or think positive or count their blessings. You sit with them in their exhaustion. You validate it. You remind them that what they're feeling is real and reasonable and not a moral failure. This is the gift hidden in the darkness. Soul fatigue, as painful as it is, can transform you into someone more human, more honest, more alive. It strips away the pretense. It reveals what actually matters. It shows you who you are beneath all the roles and responsibilities and expectations. So if you're listening to this and recognizing yourself in these words, I want you to know something. Your tiredness is not weakness. It's not failure. It's not evidence that you're not trying hard enough. Your tiredness is your soul's way of saying something needs to change. It's a message, not a sentence. A beginning, not an ending. An invitation to live differently, not a proclamation that you're doing it wrong. Maybe what needs to change is external, your job, your relationships, your circumstances. But often what needs to change is internal, how you treat yourself, what you expect of yourself, what you believe you deserve. Because here's what I've learned from years of studying human psychology and watching people heal. The deepest exhaustion often comes not from what life does to us, but from what we refuse to let ourselves be. We exhaust ourselves trying to be acceptable, trying to be enough, trying to meet standards that no human could possibly meet. And the moment we stop, the moment we say, I'm done pretending, I'm done performing, I'm done betraying myself to please others, that's when energy starts to return. Not immediately, not dramatically, but gradually, like a tide that's been held back, finally returning to shore. You start to remember what joy feels like, not the performed kind, but the spontaneous kind that bubbles up from nowhere. You start to laugh again, to cry again, to feel again. And even though feeling means sometimes feeling pain, it's better than the numbness, because pain means you're alive. Numbness means you're barely surviving. Let me leave you with this thought. Being tired of existing is not the end of your story. It's the middle. It's the part where the hero sits in the darkness, depleted and uncertain, wondering if they have anything left to give. But this is also the part where transformation happens, where old versions of self fall away, where new understanding emerges, where you discover that you're stronger than you thought, not because you can keep pushing, but because you can finally stop. Your soul is tired because it's been working overtime to keep you alive in circumstances that weren't letting you truly live. And now it's asking for something different, something more real, something more aligned with who you actually are beneath all the conditioning. This moment, this exhaustion, this feeling of barely holding on, it's not evidence that you're broken. It's evidence that you're ready to release what no longer serves you, ready to honor what you've been ignoring, ready to build a life that doesn't require you to betray yourself daily just to get through it. And that readiness, as uncomfortable as it feels, is sacred. It's your soul saying, there's more. You deserve more. We can do better than this. Listen to it. Trust it. Follow where it leads. Because on the other side of this tiredness is not just rest. It's renewal. It's reconnection. It's a version of life where you're not just surviving, but actually finally, truly living. Thank you for watching. If this video spoke to you, please take a moment to like it. It really helps more people find these stories. And if you'd like to hear more, you're always welcome to stay, to listen, to breathe, to just be. Take care of yourself. See you soon.